Defunct German car brands Part 4 DKW. In 1904, Danish engineer Jørgen Skafte Rasmussen founded a company for the sales and distribution of all kinds of machines in the Saxonian city of Chemnitz. 2 years later, the business expanded to the city of Zschopau, where he bought the premises of a defunct cloth mill. The business sold a wide variety of goods, such as accessories and spare parts for steam engines, household appliances, and devices for electrical therapy. When the business with civil goods collapsed due to the First World War, Rasmussen turned to making ignition devices for the German army. He started to develop a military steam-driven vehicle financed by the German Ministry of Defense. The business made 10 to 12 of these vehicles, but abandoned the project in 1921 due to lack of public interest. However, Rasmussen had trademarked the three-letter brand DKW, which stood for Dampfkraftwagen, which means steam-powered vehicle. After the war in 1918, Rasmussen hired engineer Hugo Ruppe, who returned from the war having developed a two-stroke toy engine. Ruppe was reluctant to market his invention himself because he had experienced that he was a good engineer but a lousy businessman when he had failed with his own car company prior to World War I. Rasmussen successfully marketed the engine as DKW des Knaben Wunsch, meaning the boy's desire, but fell out with Ruppe when he insisted on quick mass production instead of thorough development to perfection. He left the business in 1920 after having improved the engine to make it suitable as an auxiliary engine for bicycles. Rasmussen marketed this engine using the three-letter brand DKW again, now as Das kleine Wunder, the little wonder. Rasmussen's marketing department coined a rhyme that stuck for decades. DKW, das kleine Wunder, fährt bergauf wie andere runter, which translates to DKW, the little wonder drives uphill like others do downhill. The engine was a huge success, so that Rasmussen founded a new company in 1923, the Zschopauer Motorenwerke, Zschopau Motor Works, which went on to develop, build and sell motorcycles. 5 years later, the company was the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer. In 1925, Rasmussen took over the remains of the bankrupt car maker Slaby-Beringer in Berlin. He had helped the struggling business by providing them with two-stroke engines for a small car. The first model was an upgrade of the already existing Slaby-Beringer electric car, but a small car powered by a modified two-cylinder two-stroke motorcycle engine mounted longitudinally in the front, driving the rear wheels, followed soon. Because the car was underpowered, an elaborate four-cylinder V2 two-stroke engine with two additional cylinders as charging pumps instead of the usual crankshaft pump was developed. However, this engine proved to be prone to break down and use excessive amounts of fuel. In 1928, Rasmussen bought the Audi works in Zwickau, financed by the State Bank of Saxony, which obtained 25% of the shares of Rasmussen's company. In 1930, Rasmussen ordered the Audi design office to construct a small car with front-wheel drive, a low center of gravity, and an independent suspension, powered by a two-cylinder two-stroke motorcycle engine. This groundbreaking design allowed for an ultra-lightweight construction that suited the limited power of the motorcycle engine, doing away with the cumbersome V4 engine with charging pump. A welcome side effect was a much safer ride. Whereas the rear-wheel drive models were kept in production in Berlin until 1940, the front-wheel driven models were produced in Zwickau in the former Audi factory. The high warranty costs for the unreliable V4 models jeopardized the financial viability of the whole enterprise, exacerbated by the world economic crisis. The State Bank of Saxony demanded a fusion of DKW, Audi and Horch, which were followed by Wanderer of Schönau near Chemnitz, a manufacturer of bicycles, motorcycles and cars. The new group was named Auto Union. Its brand featured 4 rings, symbolizing the 4 companies, a symbol still in use by Audi today. Auto Union was the second largest car manufacturer in Germany, closely following Opel. Most cars sold came from DKW, the other brands were less successful. After 1940, production of cars was discontinued in favor of military vehicles for the German war effort. After the war ended, the Auto Union factories were in the Soviet occupation zone. The Soviet military administration ordered the demolition of the factories. All machinery went as reparations to the Soviet Union. From 1949 on, production of the pre-war model F8 was resumed, now under the name IFA F8. Using the name DKW was forbidden by the East German government. Tens of thousands of Auto Union cars, mostly DKW, were now located in the 3 western occupation zones of Germany and cut off from spare parts supply. Employees found a well-stocked spare parts warehouse in Ingolstadt in Bavaria. To ensure a continued supply with spare parts in western Germany, the Auto Union Ersatzteile GmbH, Auto Union Spare Parts LLC, was founded. The use of the old name was possible because the GDR failed to register the brand when the Auto Union AG in Chemnitz was socialized. As soon as the production of cars commenced, the company was renamed Auto Union GmbH. At this time, the company received subsidies from the Bavarian government and from the US government through the European Recovery Program, ERP, also known as Marshall Plan. Apart from the pre-war motorcycle RT125, the first vehicle was the delivery van and light truck DKW Schnellaster, which means DKW Fast Truck. It was produced in Ingolstadt and featured front-wheel drive and a transversely mounted 688 cubic centimeter 2-cylinder 2-stroke engine delivering 20 horsepower. Although the vehicle claimed fast in its name, its top speed was no more than 60 km per hour. However, the compact front-wheel drive easily enabled a great variety of bodies. Van, panel van, station wagon, flatbed, low-level flatbed, dump truck, mobile shop, ambulance, cattle truck, or simply as chassis with the driver's cab for custom coach work were available. In 1952, the engine was improved, now producing 22 horsepower and allowing for a top speed of 70 km per hour. Tread was increased for a safer road holding, noticeable by the small protruding fenders lining the wheel arches. In 1954, bore and stroke were increased, boosting the capacity to 792 cubic centimeters and allowing for an output of 30 horsepower and a top speed of 80 km per hour. Fitting the 3-cylinder 896cc engine from the passenger cars barely improved the power, now 32 horsepower, but gave a much quieter ride. Production in Germany ceased in 1962. Spanish Imosa produced the vehicle in license and continued its development. A much larger body was fitted, named DKW F1000. In 1964, the 3-cylinder 2-stroke engine was replaced by a diesel engine sourced from Mercedes-Benz, which had bought DKW in the meantime. The last vehicle based on the DKW Schnellaster was the Mercedes-Benz MB100, which remained in production in Europe until 1995. Production continued in South Korea with a modernized driver's cab under the name Istana until 2004, and in China as SAIC Maxus Istana until 2014. It retained old-fashioned features until its last production date, like a front axle suspension that had to be greased through grease fittings using a grease gun every 7,500 kilometers. In 1950, production of the first passenger car, the F89 started when Auto Union was able to lease the former armament factory from Rheinmetall Borsig in Düsseldorf. The body was based on a pre-war design for a planned DKW F9 that never went into production due to the switch to military vehicles. However, the plans for the production version of the new 3-cylinder two-stroke engine had remained in the GDR. Only early concept drawings had made it to West Germany, which took more time to be developed to a production-ready stage. Thus, the company was forced to mount the measly 2-cylinder two-stroke engine from the pre-war predecessor DKW F8, whose 23 horsepower were barely enough power to propel the car up to a speed of 95 km per hour, and that was only possible due to its excellent drag coefficient of 0.34. Ride quality and road hold were excellent, however. The car was available as a sedan, a convertible and a station wagon. The latter was partially made from wood in the first 18 production months, whereupon it was followed by an all-steel model. The F89 was officially marketed as Meisterklasse, Master Class. In 1953, the 897cc 3-cylinder two-stroke engine was finally ready for production. Because it was designed for longitudinally installation rather than transversally, it required extensive re-engineering of the engine bay, gearbox and front suspension. Its output of 34 horsepower significantly increased the performance of the car, which made it now up to 115 km per hour. It had the model number F91 and was marketed as Sonderklasse, special class. It was available as a two-door sedan, a coupe, a 4-seater convertible, a 2-seater convertible and a station wagon. The side windows of the coupe were fully retractable without a B-column. In 1955, the engine received an upgrade, giving it a capacity of 906 cc. In this configuration it delivered 40 horsepower, providing for a top speed of 125 km per hour. The body received another facelift. The car was now marketed as the Great DKW 3=6, claiming that the 3-cylinder two-stroke engine had the same smooth operation than a 6-cylinder 4-stroke engine. Internally, the model had the designations F93 for the two-door sedan, coupe and convertible, and F94 for the 4-door sedan and station wagon. After Daimler-Benz bought the Auto Union in 1958, the cars were rebranded and marketed from now on as DKW 900. Brazilian carmaker Wemack had obtained a production license for the DKW F94 from Auto Union. It was marketed as Grande DKW Wemack and as Bel Car. To get rid of the aging pre-war body, Wemack had Italian coach builder Fisore design a more modern body. This car, still featuring the antiquated two-stroke unit, was built from 1964 to 1967. After the F91 had won a number of rally events, two rally drivers developed a sports coupe with a fiberglass body fitting on the chassis of the F94 and named it DKW 3=6 Monza, after the famous Italian racetrack. It received a tuned 980cc 3-cylinder two-stroke engine delivering 44 horsepower. This made the extremely lightweight car 145 km per hour fast. Only about 75 cars were made by 3 different coach builders between 1956 and 1958. In 1957 the engine was upgraded once again to a capacity of 981 cc, producing 44 to 55 horsepower. The body received only a minor facelift. The car was now marketed as Auto Union 1000 and was available as 2- and 4-door sedans, 2-door coupe and 3-door station wagon. The body, meanwhile 20 years old, looked increasingly dated and sales began to decrease. The addition of a panoramic windshield in the 2-door models beginning in model year 1960 didn't help. Also, the popularity of the two-stroke engine started to fade. The answer to that was the introduction of a fresh oil lubrication system consisting of an oil tank in the engine bay connected to a pump, supplying the engine with the right amount of oil at any time. This way, lubrication was guaranteed even while the engine was revving going downhill with little fuel supply, making the freewheel device redundant. The car was now to be fueled with regular fuel instead of the fuel-oil mix used in previous models. The fresh oil lubrication system allowed for a much lower mixing ratio, reducing the mixture from 1 to 40 down to a variable ratio between 1 to 60 and 1 to 400, reducing the characteristic smell and blue exhaust fume to a minimum. However, this device ate even more into the reputation of the brand DKW, because in the extremely cold winter of 1962-1963, the oil became so viscous that the pump didn't work anymore and many engines seized up due to oil starvation. Production in Germany ended in 1963, while production in Brazil and Argentina continued until 1967. In 1958, a true sensation was brought to the market, the Auto Union 1000 SP, a two-seater sports coupe with the technology of the Auto Union 1000. From 1961 on, it was also available as a roadster. Its tuned engine put out 55 horsepower, allowing for a top speed of 140 km per hour. They were desirable cars with a rakish styling, at least until the asthmatic sound of the two-stroke engine spoiled the show. For that reason, the car was nicknamed the narrow-gauge Thunderbird. Being largely hand-built, they were exceedingly expensive. Only 5,004 coupes and 1,640 roadsters were built. In 1959, a small car with a modern-looking body entered the market, the DKW Junior. The body had been shown 2 years before at the 1957 IAA car show in Frankfurt, fitted with a 600cc two-cylinder two-stroke engine. The final version, however, had received a down-tuned version of the three-cylinder engine with only 750cc, producing 34 horsepower. Although the body looked modern, it was still a dated body-on-frame construction rather than a unibody. Also, the requirement to grease the joints of the suspension at 40 points every 7,500 kilometers was no longer up to date. The car was only available as a two-door sedan and was meant to be the entry-level car into the world of Mercedes-Benz brands. As such, production quality was superb. After 3 production years, the DKW Junior received a slight facelift and was marketed from now on as DKW F11 with a 796cc engine producing 34 horsepower and DKW F12 with an 889cc engine with 40 to 45 horsepower. In 1963, a roadster was added to the line, only available for the F12 with a stronger engine. Production ended in 1965. The last new model under the brand of DKW was launched in 1963, the DKW F102. The engine capacity was increased to the maximum possible, now having 1,175 cc. The engine produced 60 horsepower and used excessive amount of fuel. Apart from the engine, the car was a very modern construction and the design was finally up to date as well. A huge leap from the pre-war design of the Auto Union 1000 it replaced. Finally, the unibody principle was used in the F102. But even the upgraded 3-cylinder two-stroke engine provided insufficient power compared with the competitors. DKW turned to engineer Müller of Andernach, who developed a V6 two-stroke engine with a capacity of 1,288 cubic centimeters and 80 horsepower. It used less fuel than the series engine, but DKW was unable to invest in a new production line. Plans to swap the engines at an external company proved to be unfeasible, so only very few F102 V6 were ever built. The reputation of DKW was ruined, the stinky two-stroke engines had fallen out of favor, and emission standards would soon limit the CO and hydrocarbon content in the exhaust, which was excessively high in any two-stroke engine. In the spring of 1965, Volkswagen bought Auto Union from Daimler-Benz, who were so eager to sell the loss-making company that they gave a newly designed four-cylinder four-stroke engine with an unusually high compression ratio away as well. Volkswagen stopped production of the F11, F12 models almost immediately and kept the F102 in production at low volume. Still, only 25,000 of the 52,753 produced F102 cars were ever sold. The four-stroke engine was fitted into the existing F102 body, which required modifications of the front to accommodate the longer engine. The car received the internal model number F103, but was sold as Audi 60, Audi 72, Audi 75, Audi 80 and Audi Super 90 from 1966 on. It turned out to be a very successful car due to its excellent fuel economy and solid build quality, and was kept in production until 1972. This model marked the relaunch of the Audi brand by Volkswagen, which exists until this day. The engine taken over from Mercedes-Benz formed the basis for all Volkswagen engines of the 1970s and early 1980s. Both the car and the engines saved Volkswagen from almost certain bankruptcy caused by their conservative model policy and clinging to the air-cooled rear-engine rear-wheel drive principle.